Welcome to my channel where you can uncover true tales of spousal deceits and astonishing developments. Click the subscribe button and let's delve into our narrative. I finally arrived at my home at 4 a.m., but on a Sunday morning. The traffic had been dreadful on my journey back from Dallas to Kansas City. It always is on Saturdays, and a huge collision on the freeway had held me up for numerous hours. I assumed Jenny, my wife, would have been sleeping for a long while by then, but I was astonished she hadn't left a light on for me. Retrieving my luggage and briefcase from the back of my truck, I barely managed to hold them all at once. I shuffled up to the front door, let myself in, and instantly sensed something was terribly amiss. The house was chilly. Clearly the heating was turned down very low or off, which was odd since Jenny invariably kept the heating up too high for my preference. Setting my bags down, I switched on some lights and was stunned to notice that some of our furniture was missing. My thoughts whirled with bewilderment. I hurried upstairs to our bedroom, where theoretically Jenny should have been sleeping. The bed was vacant, wardrobe doors and dresser drawers were ajar, and nearly all of Jenny's clothes were absent. I stood frozen in shock for a few moments. What in the world was happening here? Thinking a small drink might help, I went back down to our living room. I fetched a bottle of whiskey from the bar and sank into my recliner to ponder the predicament I found myself in. It was evidently clear that my beloved wife had departed, but why? Jenny and I had been wed for nearly 18 years, and we had two wonderful 17-year-old twin sons who were both in their freshman year at Boston University. Honestly, when Jenny and I tied the knot, I don't believe we were deeply in love with one another. We were simply dating and enjoying ourselves. But life throws curveballs. Jenny got pregnant with Joe and Jack, and I did the honorable thing. There wasn't much else I could do. My father would have disowned me otherwise. But love is a peculiar thing. I soon realized I was utterly enchanted with Jenny and my sons. Practically my entire existence revolved around them. Whatever Jenny desired, I'd go to great lengths to provide. No matter what people say, I am as committed to her as any husband could be. And since the boys have been at university, we've been compensating for the time we missed during their childhood. Not everything was perfect, though. Jenny was a determined woman, and honestly, I often acquiesced to her demands just to maintain harmony. Generally, I was content with most aspects of my marriage, but now it seemed I had been deceived, or at least Jenny had. It definitely appeared Jenny had left me, and I was baffled as to why. She continually expressed her love for me, and we had acknowledged that neither of us really envisioned getting married if not for the pregnancy. However, we both concurred that it turned out to be the best event in our lives and how deeply we had grown to love each other since our wedding. It seemed to me that perhaps someone had developed doubts. Damn, my emotions took over. I abruptly got irate and began to pace the room. Then I stormed out into the back garden to light my pipe. Jenny detests the scent of my pipe tobacco indoors, so I always step outside to smoke. I was out there for 10 minutes before I recognized that Jenny wasn't there to object, and it seemed she wouldn't be in the future. Yet, for some reason, I completed my pipe outdoors. As I re-entered through the back door, I noticed a letter resting on the kitchen table. For a moment, I stared at it. Mark, it stated on the envelope. It was undoubtedly from Jenny, and when she penned it, she had been irritated with me. The only time she ever calls me Mark is when she's upset with me. I sat down at the table, picked up the envelope, and turned it over in my hands. I don't think I truly wanted to open it. I suspected I wouldn't appreciate what was written inside. Gradually, I ripped the envelope open and then unfolded the letter within. You deceitful, unfaithful, egotistical scoundrel, I am leaving you. I believed you loved me, but now I see things differently. You have been deceiving me with that young woman. And I have evidence. I'm consulting with a lawyer on Monday. I will divorce you and take all I can. I will make you pay for betraying me. Didn't you think about our sons when you were gallivanting with that young woman? She's barely older than the twins. I will drain you of everything you have. You scoundrel, so you better start looking for a new place to live, because you won't be able to keep the house once I'm through with you. And if I ever encounter that girl, you can warn her. I'll claw her eyes out, Jenny wrote. Interesting, I murmured to myself. I wonder who this girl is that Jenny is referring to. Seems like a misunderstanding in the information somewhere. Look, do I seem like the type who would cheat? A man like that would have deserted Jenny when she became pregnant. I value what I have and certainly don't want to lose it. Sure, I've been tempted, who hasn't? But I've always been cautious. Yet, Jenny was convinced I was unfaithful. So what was I to do? There was only one option: go to bed. I had been awake since before 6 on Friday morning, and now it was 4:30 on Sunday morning. I went to bed just like that. I've reached my position in business by keeping my emotions in check. Once I understood the issue, I could somewhat relax, knowing I could easily reassure Jenny she was mistaken. But as I lay in bed, unsettling questions arose. If Jenny believed I was unfaithful, why hadn't she confronted me directly? Maybe she expected such behavior because she was the one being unfaithful. Shocked by this possibility, I sprang out of bed. This was serious. I began frantically searching the house for any sign of Jenny's infidelity. I tore through her sewing room. There was no point in searching her bedroom drawers, as they were empty. Then I tackled the computer. I broke into her email and scoured the internet history for hours, a complete waste of time, but necessary. I found nothing except Jenny's search for a divorce lawyer done the previous Tuesday, but no evidence she had actually contacted one. I got a daring idea: the best defense is a good offense. It was a long shot, but I decided to act on it. At just past 9 a.m., I emailed the law firm Jenny had selected, asking them to represent me in the divorce. Luckily, Jenny hadn't spoken to them yet. Within minutes, they responded, asking me to come to their office as soon as possible. So that's what I did, and by 10 a.m. on Sunday, I handed Maria Johnson a check, and she became my attorney from that moment on. Jenny might not have realized that some attorneys work even on Sundays. After I explained to Maria what I had discovered at home and showed her the letter, she questioned whether I had ever been unfaithful in my marriage. I assured her that I cherished my wife and hadn't done anything since we got married that I believed would endanger our relationship. Maria advised me to sit tight, find out where Jenny had gone, and talk to her. She suspected it was likely just a miscommunication and that it could be resolved with a bit of dialogue between us. I returned home and began searching for Jenny. I called her parents and brother, but they both claimed they hadn't heard from her and she wasn't with them. It seemed she hadn't informed them about leaving me either. They remained oblivious, but quickly sided with her and became tight-lipped with me after learning why she had left. The next call was one I dreaded but felt was necessary. It was to Jenny's friend Kathy. Kathy has been divorced twice, and frankly I understood why. Sweet one moment, utterly unreasonable the next. Jenny and Kathy have been friends since their school days. Whenever Kathy wasn't with one of her many admirers, she was likely with Jenny. They would regularly have girls' nights out every few weeks. It wasn't strange for Jenny to ask me to pick her up because Kathy had found company. Jenny and I used to joke about it. I had always trusted Jenny. Whenever Kathy found someone, Jenny would call me as her backup. I dialed Kathy's number and immediately hit the jackpot. Kathy began berating me as soon as she heard my voice. I calmly insisted on speaking to Jenny, but Kathy denied her presence. However, I was convinced she was there. It was the last place she could be. In the midst of Kathy's tirade, she revealed she knew about Jenny leaving me. After about 5 minutes, I hung up, overwhelmed by old emotions. So it was outside again for another pipe to calm down. Out there, I regained composure and started thinking. Jenny was playing games. This act of running off without a discussion was meant to provoke me, but I wasn't going to let it affect me anymore. I hadn't done anything disgraceful. All right, Jenny, if you want to play games, I'll play, I resolved. I stormed back inside and called the twins. They were shocked when I informed them their mother had left. I reassured them I hadn't done anything that would cause Jenny to leave, and I felt they believed me. I also mentioned my suspicion that Jenny was at Kathy's, and declared that, as far as I was concerned, she could stay there. The boys thought it was all a big misunderstanding and believed their mother would soon realize this. I know I shouldn't have involved the boys in this, but given the ridiculous games underway, I knew they would confront their mother about it. Then I went to the garage. When we purchased the house, I had changed the lock cylinders on all the external doors for 2 main reasons. We weren't sure if we had received all the keys to the house. And I wanted a uniform set of cylinders so all the external doors use the same key. It simplifies not having to carry multiple keys, and fitting a cylinder only takes a few minutes. I had reset all the lock barrels to their original state, then disconnected the garage door opener and secured the shutter firmly. Jenny wanted to leave, and now she was thoroughly locked out without a way to return while I tinkered with the garage shutter. During this, Mr. Brown, my neighbor from across the street, approached. He and his wife are quite curious folks, so I assumed they'd seen Jenny moving out and came over to gather some gossip. He got very little information from me, but I learned that a U-Haul truck had shown up Friday morning. 2 men and a woman assisted Jenny in removing a substantial amount of belongings from our house. The men left in the truck and Jenny followed in her Toyota. The other woman drove away in a green Volkswagen Beetle. I was correct, it was Kathy. That annoying little green Beetle belonged to her. That evening, I drew all the curtains on the ground floor and closed the blinds on the garage windows. From the outside, no one could see inside, but from the upstairs windows, I could watch the front door and driveway through the security CCTV system I had installed years ago. This system was put in place so Jenny could see who was at the door when I wasn't home. Then, I called Kathy again. I told you, Mark, Jenny isn't here. I don't know where she is, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you, she snapped. That's perfectly fine, Kathy. I understand. But if you happen to see Jenny, could you relay a message? Tell her that since she has chosen to believe some foolish rumor without even speaking to me, I don't want to know where she has gone. In fact, I don't want to see her again. If by chance you do hear from her, please ask her to let me know where to send the divorce papers. I intend to divorce her for desertion. Let's see who ends up worse off in her little game. You can't do that. She's going to divorce you for adultery, Kathy exclaimed. Before she can do that, Kathy, I actually have to have committed adultery, which I haven't, I responded confidently. Don't worry about it. The divorce will likely be in my favor since Jenny has clearly decided to desert me. I have a ridiculous letter from her stating just that, and my lawyer assures me it's all the evidence I need. I hung up, then unplugged the phone. Kathy's slip of the tongue was all I needed. She almost said I then corrected herself to you was seen. That last part of her sentence made me think Kathy might have told Jenny she had seen me with another woman. Would Kathy now convey exactly what I had said? Would this sow doubt in Jenny's mind? I went into the kitchen, prepared myself a meal, and after it was completely dark, I stealthily walked around the house to ensure no one could see inside. Jenny wanted to engage in games, so we would play them. Then, I settled at the computer to amuse myself until the anticipated drama unfolded. At 8:30 p.m., I observed Jenny's Toyota pull into the drive on the CCTV. She must have reconsidered her plans. I watched her sit in the car, observing the house. Then Kathy joined her in the car. Kathy must have driven in her own car and parked it where I couldn't see it. It appeared Jenny was uncertain, perhaps thinking she lacked sufficient evidence for a court case, or maybe she was wrong initially. Regardless, it seemed she was contemplating returning, hoping to stay in the house, which would negate any claim of her having deserted me. After about 15 minutes, Jenny exited the car and attempted to unlock the front door. I figured out she must have been trying to open the garage door with the remote control, but she eventually stopped trying. Naturally, her key wouldn't work in the changed lock. Jenny rang the doorbell a few times and shouted through the mailbox. Kathy exited the Toyota and joined her. I could hear their voices, but could only make out Kathy suggesting, "Try the other door." They moved out of the CCTV's view, and soon I heard them at the kitchen door, then the patio door, not far from me. Moments later, they were back at the front door. Jenny tried to manually lift the garage shutter, but eventually gave up on that too. They returned to the Toyota and stood beside it, having a lively discussion that concluded when Kathy walked away and Jenny re-entered her car. For the next half hour, Jenny sat in the car, seemingly making repeated calls on her cell phone, but not actually talking to anyone. I presumed she alternated between calling the house phone, which was busy, and the cell phone I had turned off. Then Kathy came back with a McDonald's bag, rejoining Jenny in the Toyota. They stayed there until well past midnight, when they suddenly drove off. Peering around the curtain, I noticed Kathy's VW was still parked on the street, so I assumed they planned to return the next morning. All day Sunday, they sat in the driveway, with Kathy frequently running to McDonald's. They left just after midnight again, but this time they took Kathy's car too. I guessed Kathy needed it for work the next morning. I left the house very early on Monday, just in case Jenny showed up again. I went to the highway rest area, grabbed a questionable breakfast, and read the newspapers until it was time for work. Unusually for me, I was the first to arrive at the office. I anticipated the games would end today. Jenny was bound to call me. Sure enough, at 9 my phone rang. "Mark, where the hell have you been?" Jenny demanded. "I've been trying to get into the house all weekend. This verbal assault upset me again. Honestly, I was expecting a very remorseful Jenny that morning." "I wouldn't try to get into the house again, Jenny." You don't live there anymore, remember? And since the house is too big for me alone, I've rented it out. It was a lie, of course, but it achieved the desired effect. Jenny was furious. Are you insane? You can't have rented it out. Why would you do that? Look, Jenny, we've got an expensive court battle coming up. The rent from the house will help pay for it. You've gone completely mad. No, Jenny, you went mad when you accused me of cheating, called me all those names in your absurd letter, and wouldn't talk to me while hiding at Kathy's. Mark, we need to talk. It's a bit late for talking now, Jenny. Now it's time for the lawyers to earn their pay, so that's it. You're not even sorry for anything. You're just happy to see me go after 18 years. Oh, hold on. First, I've done nothing to be sorry for. You were the one who walked away. You left that ridiculous note that nearly gave me a heart attack, and you were the one talking about divorce. I suggest you see that lawyer you were so eager to threaten me with. Find out what he has to say. Then call me back and give me his details so I can pass them to mine. Goodbye, Jenny. I hung up the phone. Was I pushing things too far? Well, yes, I probably was. But in my view, there's only one thing worse than discovering your spouse might be unfaithful, and that's when the person you love doesn't trust you as they should. I made a few necessary phone calls, the first to U-Haul. There were a few details I needed to clarify with them. They provided me a number, and I had a lengthy talk with a rather remorseful young man I'd met once at one of Kathy's gatherings. I think I frightened him quite a bit. Then, I made an international call to cover that base. Half an hour later, Maria Johnson, my attorney, called. She seemed somewhat irritated. Mr. Smith, your wife just tried to hire me today, and I suspect you knew she would try. Why didn't you tell me? Yes, I did think that was her plan, but since you're the top divorce lawyer around, I preferred you represent me, I explained. My assistant referred her to another reputable yet pricey firm. Maria, out of curiosity, can you name a lawyer who isn't costly? I joked. No offense taken, Mark. It's your money, after all. You can speak freely. But why aren't you talking to her? Couldn't this be sorted out? The thing is, she's calling me Mark. That means she's angry. If she weren't, she'd be more receptive. As long as she's using that name, she won't listen to my side or believe I didn't have an affair. I see your point, but it really sounds like you two need to talk. I'm open to that, once Jenny is ready to listen. Plus, I have some critical questions for her. Depending on her answers, you might be handling our divorce regardless. Mark, do you suspect she's been unfaithful? Not exactly, but she's quick to assume I would be, which makes me wonder if she's projecting her own behavior onto me. I understand your reasoning now, though it's quite unusual. We'll see how things unfold. I'll update you later, Maria. I couldn't concentrate much for the rest of the morning until Jenny called around noon. Mark, we need to talk immediately. I dropped my defensive stance and agreed to meet her at 8:20 p.m. at the pub near my office. Initially, Jenny seemed caught off guard by what she perceived as my sudden change of heart, but when she reverted to calling me Mark, I knew there were still issues to address. In the pub, Jenny approached and sat across from me, though I had left space beside me in the booth. Aren't you going to buy me a drink? She asked. No, you can buy your own drinks. Remember, you left, I retorted, making clear I wasn't there to cater to her. Taken aback, Jenny walked to the bar to get a drink herself. When she returned, she demanded, "Well, what do you have to say for yourself?" Jenny, I honestly don't know what's gotten into you. What exactly do you think I should be apologizing for? I wasn't in Denver last weekend. I was in Chicago, as you know. We talked several times. I have no idea about that. I only spoke to your cell phone. For all I knew, you could have been anywhere, even Timbuktu, and I was told you were in Denver with another woman. Jenny, I was on a business trip. You know my schedule: St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, 3 days each. I've been following this routine 4 times a year for nearly 5 years. But you say I was seen in Denver? Whoever told you they saw me there is either mistaken or lying. Why would anyone even want to go to Denver at this time of year? It's probably freezing on that coast. To go see the lights. Kathy said she went on a coach trip last weekend to see the Denver lights and to do some Christmas shopping. She claimed she saw me and the woman I was supposedly with, so engrossed in her that I walked right past Kathy several times and even followed us to our room. Kathy, I figured as much. Jenny, how long have I known Kathy? Since you've known me, I suppose. Do you really think I wouldn't notice Kathy if I was staying in the same hotel as her? How long was I supposedly sharing a hotel with her? She went up for a weekend trip from Friday to Monday. Where's your logic in this? Kathy isn't my favorite person, but she's noticeable. Do you think any man wouldn't notice her wearing those sexy short skirts, or notice her from a mile away because of her distinctive features? I've told you before, Kathy is attractive, no guy misses her, and unfortunately, quite a few have found that out the hard way. Jenny looked slightly confused. I think the argument was nearly over, and she was about to apologize when the door burst open and Kathy strode into the bar. She made a beeline for our booth and, to my surprise, plunked herself down next to me, trapping me in with a triumphant look. She pulled out a small folder, the kind used for photographic prints. "Right, you bastard, explain this," she demanded, as she pulled a photo from the folder and shoved it under my nose. I did a quick double take at the print, then started smiling. I took the photo from Kathy's hand and turned it towards Jenny. "Oh, didn't you recognize Ling, Jenny? Look, Kathy has taken some nice photos of Ling. I hope you took some of my brother as well. Kathy, do you know I didn't realize they were in the country? Did you? Jenny, I suppose their ship must have docked in Galveston and Philip took Ling up to see the Denver lights. You know their ship usually docks in Amsterdam. My twin brother is married to Ling, a beautiful Chinese woman he met in Singapore years ago. They live on a container ship where he is the first mate. The ship spends so little time in port that many of the married crew members bring their spouses along. Oh, and by the way, my brother and I are identical twins, just like my sons. Twins run in our family. Handy, isn't it?" By then, Jenny was crying, and Kathy sat there with her mouth agape. I continued, "Did you say hello to Phil, Kathy? If I recall, you had a crush on him at our wedding, but that was a long time ago, wasn't it?" Now both of them were crying, Jenny because she had made a major mistake, and Kathy, I supposed, because she was upset that she had put Jenny in this awkward position. I sat back and sipped my beer while the two of them regained their composure. After a while they stopped crying, but it was clear they had no idea what to say next. Kathy was the first to muster up the courage. "Mark, I'm sorry. I completely forgot about Phil. I genuinely thought it was you. You two are so similar," Kathy eventually confessed. "Well, we would be similar. We are identical twins, after all. And don't worry about forgetting Phil, though, Kathy. I doubt he would remember someone like you," I responded, perhaps a bit harshly, but I was still quite upset. "I'm so sorry," Mark, Jenny chimed in, seeming to find her own courage. "I just didn't think about Philip. Can you forgive me for being so foolish? You must see how it looked." "No, I bloody can't," I replied angrily. Both women looked visibly shocked by my response. "I've got a question for you, Jenny. Why would you even think that I would cheat on you? We've been married for 18 years. Have I ever given you reason to doubt me?" "No, Mark. You've been a wonderful husband and a great father to our boys." "Then what made you so certain I was being unfaithful? And before you answer, think. Don't tell me it was because Kathy told you. That would mean you trusted her more than you trust me, your husband. The guy who has provided for you for the last 18 years. The guy who came running to find you every time your so-called friend here found a new date on your nights out, which I never complained about, by the way." Jenny sat there, taking in my words, pondering before responding. I waited a moment before continuing. "Why were you so quick to believe I was cheating? Could it be because you've been doing things you shouldn't have behind my back? You know, people often suspect others of behaviors they themselves are guilty of. It never occurred to me that you could be unfaithful when out with Kathy, because I couldn't imagine cheating on you. But now, you've changed the rules, Jenny. Now I think I was naive. Without a second thought, you assumed I was unfaithful. You never even challenged me or questioned it, you just accepted it as truth. All right, now convince me you've never cheated on me. What about all those times you came home at 2 or 3 in the morning, or the times you stayed over at Kathy's? What were you up to while I was away?" "Oh God, Mark, I've never cheated on you," honestly, Jenny finally exclaimed. "Oh, so you say. Well, if that's true, who were those 2 men who drove the U-Haul on Friday? And why did you kiss that little jerk?" I saw Jenny flinch when I mentioned the kiss. "They are just a couple of guys from Kathy's office. She asked them to help me," Jenny explained. "Oh yeah? And how did you repay them for their help when they got your stuff to Kathy's place? The same way Kathy compensates for her favors. I knew what I was implying. Kathy had often bragged about how she handled her transactions. I saw her in action once. It was entertaining but a bit demeaning. Come on, most guys enjoy a good brawl, but I've never seen the woman she caught her husband with again. No, I wouldn't do that. I just gave Mike a small kiss on the cheek to thank him for his help. That's all it was, nothing more. Just a little peck. Yeah, but that was in public where everyone could see. What did he get in private back at Kathy's place? Nothing, Mark. You've got to believe me. They just unloaded the van and left. They had to get the van back. If that's so, can you explain why you were so nervous then? That van wasn't returned until 10 on Saturday morning. When you rent a van online, girl, they send you the paperwork by email. I've seen that email. The van wasn't returned until 10 a.m. on Saturday. So what really happened? I need to get out of here before I lose my temper. Let me out, Kathy, before I push you out of the way, I said as Kathy stood up and I moved past her. Turning back to Jenny, I said, I'm going to accept nothing less than the entire truth from you. I have plenty of acquaintances frequenting the same clubs you and Kathy visit. You better decide quickly if you want to save our marriage. At this point, I don't care either way. But if I hear any stories about what you've been up to these past years, you'd better have already told me about them. Be at the house tonight at 8. I'll give you an hour to explain everything. I walked out of the bar. I'm not foolish, and I don't believe Jenny is either. But without my prompting, my friends have always kept a close watch on Jenny and Kathy during their nights out. They would especially watch Kathy. It's well known she's quite the flirt. But Jenny had gotten herself a nickname at the clubs. She was known as the Ice Queen. Jenny was always the life of the party on the dance floor, but that was as far as it ever went. Jenny's problem now was that she didn't know exactly who all my friends were and what angle they might put on what they observed. If she had misbehaved, she would need to tell me herself tonight. Having taken a late lunch, I decided there was little point in returning to the office, so I started heading home. Once home, I plugged the phone back in, which I had unplugged before leaving that morning. As I walked in, I noticed the answering machine's message light blinking. There were a couple of messages from earlier in the day that Jenny had obviously left before she called my office. They were frantic, demanding to know where I was and why she couldn't get into the house. Then there was a call from Mike Harris. Mike and I had gone to school together. We weren't exactly friends back then, but let's just say he did well in his homework thanks to my help. Mike had always liked to play the tough guy with his friends, but he actually wanted to do well in school, and I acted somewhat like a private tutor for him. Mark, I've been trying to reach you all weekend. What's the story, mate? Jenny and Kathy were at the club Friday night, and Kathy was telling everyone you two have separated. Give me a call, will you? I need to know how you want to handle things, Mike's message said. I returned Mike's call, but before I could even speak, he announced he was coming over right away and hung up. Within 10 minutes, his car pulled into my drive. Mike is a tough guy who in his younger days had a bit of trouble with the police. He straightened himself out after joining a good gym where he took up amateur boxing, which eventually led him to become a bouncer at one of the bigger local night spots. Over time, he worked his way up to managing the place, and some say he's also a part owner of a couple of local venues, which wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, Mike has always had a soft spot for me. As I mentioned, he's looked after my interests, particularly concerning Jenny. He would often call me at work, or sometimes he'd drop by the pub where I had lunch. Without my asking, he would suddenly update me on who Jenny had been dancing with, and if anyone had tried to hit on her. I'm confident that if any guy had ever convinced her to step outside, Mike or his bouncers would have intervened. It was Mike who informed me that Jenny was known as the Ice Queen. Mike declined my offer of a beer since he was working later, so we opted for some coffee instead. All right, Mark, what's going on between you and Jenny? She was at the club on Friday, and Kathy was telling everyone that you two had split up. She claimed you were seeing someone in Denver last weekend. Don't tell me Kathy went up to Denver last week, and apparently Philip was there with his MS. Kathy mistook him for you and told Jenny. I replied, I came back from Dallas to find that Jenny had moved out without a word. Oh, but you clarified things with her quickly, right? Not exactly, Mike. Let's just say we're in the midst of some mind games right now. I was really upset that Jenny hadn't talked to me about it initially. I was wondering if she had been unfaithful. Hey, no chance there, man. No one gets close to Jenny, I'm certain of that. and some of the guys thought they might get lucky Friday night given the rumors of trouble between you two, but from what I heard, the Ice Queen was colder than usual. Jenny and Kathy left the club well before closing, and a taxi took them straight to Kathy's. I appreciate that, Mike. It's good to have friends. It's part of the service, Mark. Hey, you should drop by the club sometime. You never visit the guys anymore. From there, our conversation shifted back to old friends and other casual topics until it was nearly 8 p.m. and Mike said he needed to head to the club. As Mike was leaving, Jenny pulled into the driveway. She did a double take as she saw Mike reversing out. She looked confused, recognizing him but unaware that I knew him. I was standing at the doorway as she walked up the steps. Wasn't that Harris, the manager at the Starlight? She asked. Mike Harris? Yeah, he's an old friend. He stopped by to talk about our potential divorce. Come in, let's sit in the kitchen. I've got coffee brewing. I followed Jenny into the kitchen and reached the coffee pot before her. This is my house now, and I'll pour the coffee. Look, Mark, this is silly. I realize you're upset, but you're being childish. Kathy was sure it was you she saw. How was she supposed to know Philip and Ling were in the country? I would have assumed Kathy was mistaken until I verified it myself. But you didn't check, did you? You just decided to leave. Mark, I was wrong, I admit it. But why did you lock me out of the house? Because you decided it was no longer your house when you walked out on Friday. You effectively ended our marriage then. But Mark, don't be ridiculous. I was angry and trying to teach you a lesson. It was stupid. I'm sorry, and I want to come back home. Well, you made your bed, now you'd better get used to lying in it. You mean you won't let me move back in? No, because I can't trust you. Tell me, when did Kathy tell you she saw Philip in Denver? Tuesday, when she got back. Why do you ask? Before I spoke to you on the phone that night or after? After. So on Wednesday when I called, you already knew Kathy thought she saw me, or rather Philip. Why didn't you confront me on Wednesday evening? Better yet, why didn't you call me back on Tuesday after Kathy told you? Why did you act as if nothing was wrong? I wasn't sure what I was going to do about it then, but you made your decision, didn't you? You thought life would be better without me, thinking you'd get everything, our savings, and a big portion of my pension. It seemed only the money mattered to you. Oh my God, no, Mark. Where did you get that idea? I just wanted to scare you, honestly. So, if you were just trying to scare me, why take all that furniture? Just your absence would have been scary enough. You didn't need to clear out half the house. You're right, it was excessive, but Kathy suggested it would show you I was serious. Kathy again, it always comes back to her. Do you realize nearly all our disagreements have stemmed from Kathy and her ideas? And there's another thing, if Kathy had told you she saw me with a Chinese woman, what would you have thought? I would have immediately thought of Phil, but Kathy never mentioned the girl she claimed to see me with was Asian, did she? I suppose she didn't notice. You have to admit, Ling's features aren't that pronounced, so why the hell was Kathy telling everyone at the club that I was shacked up with some little bird? She can't have known. She said she didn't know the girl was Chinese until you pointed it out on those photos in the pub, and she only got those back from the lab this morning. Don't ask me, ask Mike next time you see him, or any of your buddies down at the club. They'll tell you what Kathy was saying. I think Kathy knew it was Ling and Phil when she saw them. I just can't figure out why she told you she didn't recognize them. Why would she do that? I don't know, Jenny. She's your friend. You tell me what she was trying to achieve. Jenny sat silently, staring into space. I got up and poured myself a drink. Can I have one of those? She asked. I poured her a scotch and soda. Mark, can I ask you something? Will you be honest with me? I've always been honest with you. Well, there were a couple of times I had to lie to you when I was planning surprises, like our 10th anniversary honeymoon. This is serious. I need you to tell me the truth. Have you ever made a pass at Kathy since we've been married? Now, who's trying to be funny? Of course I haven't. Do I look desperate? God knows what you could catch from her. She's never been choosy. And what about Fran Cooper, your old secretary? Fran? Are you mad? You've met her husband. What? Do you think I have a death wish? So, you've never made a pass at Kathy and never had anything going with Fran? Don't be silly. Why do you ask? You definitely never kissed Fran. Well, of course I kissed her a few times, maybe under the mistletoe at those Christmas parties. No, I mean besides at the Christmas parties. Everyone kisses under the mistletoe. But you're being silly again. Only a fool would mix business with pleasure. Besides, I was very happy with the woman I had. Bugger. I've been such a fool. I'll make no comment on that, but it's cost you more than you'll ever know. Jenny looked at me with a gaze that should have sent me rushing to comfort her. My heart went out to her, but I was still trying to maintain the moral high ground. Then she turned on the tears. Oh, I lost the battle. I'd had a hard enough time walking out of the pub earlier when she started crying a bad tactical move on her part. If she had sat next to me then, I would have given in. I moved over and sat beside her, putting my arm around her shoulders. After what seemed like an eternity, she stopped crying. You've never done anything in our marriage that you're ashamed of, have you? What do you think, dear? Then why? Why what, Jenny? Why would Kathy tell me you had? Why would she say she had seen you with Fran? You'd better ask her that, Jenny. She's your friend. No, she's not anymore. She isn't. I don't know why, but every doubt I've had about you in our married life, I can trace back to Kathy. What doubts? Oh, suspicions about you fooling around when you're away from home, and that you had something going on with Fran. What? Why the hell haven't you ever mentioned this before? Because I love you. I didn't want to escalate things. I thought I'd let things slide, and you would return to me. I'd never leave you, Jenny. I love you too much. I know that now. I should have always known it. I'm sorry, Mark. I haven't been a very good wife. I haven't offered you the trust one should have. Can you forgive me? Oh, now there's a question, but I don't think it's for me to answer. I think you need to figure that out yourself. Look into your heart and determine why you thought I'd be unfaithful to you. When you can solve that, I think you'll find your answer. Jenny reached into her purse and pulled out her mobile phone. Deliberately, she dialed a number. Kathy, you are no longer a friend of mine. I never want to see you or hear from you again. Shut up and listen, you. I'm calling you because if I met you in person, I'm not sure I could restrain myself. I might do something drastic. All my life, I've listened to you. Now I realize you've always been trying to create a rift between me and my husband. You've deceived me so many times, I've lost count. Now, stay out of my life. Jenny looked up at me. Can I bring my bags in from the car now? No, we'll go straight to bed. I've missed you for the last couple of weeks, and you'll definitely not need any pajamas tonight. We went up to bed and spent the night trying to recreate our honeymoon. I think it was one of the best nights we've ever had. In the morning, I arranged to have our furniture collected from the storage unit Jenny had rented. We settled back into our usual routine. Oh, there were the lawyer's bills to pay, but at least Kathy was out of our lives. I think it was worth every cent. It was some time before Jenny figured out what Kathy's problem was. Jenny bumped into an old acquaintance one day who told her that before Jenny and I were married, Kathy had admitted she had a crush on me and she planned to steal me from Jenny. Well, that never happened. I do recall Kathy being a bit forward, but as I mentioned, I always perceived her to be aggressive, so I kept my distance. Jenny and I plan to grow old together, and we discuss our emotions much more these days. Oh, I'm a regular at Mike's club most weeks now, but Jenny dances a lot more than I do. As for Kathy, I don't think either Jenny or I have seen her since the night of our last anniversary. I had been away on one of my trips. Jenny greeted me passionately as I entered the front door, then started dragging me up to the bedroom, shedding her clothes as she went. Once in the room, she pushed me onto the bed and quickly undid my belt. Within moments she had removed my trousers and underwear while I took off my shirt. I must admit, I don't recall her taking off my shoes and socks. Perhaps she did that, after her lips engaged with my manhood. But by that point, I was too engulfed in the moment. I watched her head move up and down as she tried to take in as much as she could. What's the old saying? she could suck a billiard ball through a garden hose. Well, that's what it felt like she was attempting to do. God, Jenny is incredibly skilled, far better than either Fran or Kathy, though maybe not quite as skilled as that young woman in Denver, although thankfully she reminded me a lot of Ling. I almost messed things up in a big way there. Oh, by the way, I did test Kathy out just before I married Jenny. Come on, there are perks to being an identical twin, but honestly, Kathy was all flair and little substance. I think she must have been a bit annoyed with Phil when I told her she wasn't that great in bed. Well, I never did like the idea. I'm just wondering if Kathy ever figured out that Phil and I tricked her. If she did, she was the only one. Well, I think it might explain why she tried to stir trouble. Look, I've always said that I consider myself a true gentleman, but I've never claimed to have a perfect character. Still, life goes on, just a bit more cautiously. Thanks for watching. What would you have done if you found out your partner's betrayal was orchestrated by a supposed friend? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories of betrayal and revenge. Until next time.